Yesterday, Sayadaw explained on anicca so that yogis who are practicing here can compare what they experience through their practice with the theory. And when they find out that theory and what they have experienced through their experience coincide, then they can rejoice. So Sayadaw explained on what is mentioned in the text, anicca veditava. So one should know anicca, impermanent. And anicca lakkhana, characteristic of impermanence, should be known. And anicca nupassana, contemplation of impermanence, should be known. So one should know three things: anicca, impermanence; anicca lakkhana, characteristic of impermanence; and anicca nupassana, contemplation of impermanence. So yesterday, Sayadaw explained that objects that arises in oneself, they are all anicca, they are all impermanent. So the reason for this is that hutva abhavato, these objects, they arise when the circumstances meet, and they arise all of a sudden, and they pass away in a flash. So they arise and pass away within a very short moment. So they are in a complete flux. So that's why it is said that everything is anicca. The objects that arises in oneself, they are all anicca, impermanent, because they pass away after arising. So whatever object that arises in the body is all impermanent, because they pass away after arising. In anicca lakkhana means characteristic of impermanence. So the Pali definition for anicca lakkhana is hutva abhavakaro. It means the manner of passing away after arising. It is characteristic of impermanence. So the object, all objects giving rise to new, all objects giving rise to new. So this characteristic or this sign of impermanence is called anicca lakkhana. So this anicca lakkhana, characteristic of impermanence, it is not paramattha, it is not ultimate truth, but it is concept that is connected with paramattha. So this anicca lakkhana, characteristic of impermanence, is called paññati gatika, because this anicca lakkhana is concept. So knowing the dissolution of the object when noting is called anicca nupassana jnana. So when the yogi sees dissolution of the object when noting it, she is said to be gaining anicca nupassana jnana, contemplation of impermanence. So insight into nama rupa, knowledge into nama rupa, knowledge into cause and effect. So during these stages, one does not see the dissolution of the object yet. So not seeing the dissolution of the object at the stage of knowledge into nama, rupa and cause and effect. So at these stages, it is not Vipassana jnana, it is not insight knowledge yet, because yogi does not see the dissolution of the object at this stage of knowledges. So this knowledge into nama, rupa and knowledge into cause and effect, they are just preliminary stage, they are just foundation of Vipassana jnana, they are just foundation of insight knowledge. So among the three moments, arising, presence and dissolution, among these three moments, only when one comes to see the dissolution of the object will one be developing anicca-nupassana jnana, insight into impermanence, contemplation of impermanence. So one will attain anicca-nupassana jnana only when he, she sees dissolution of the object. So when one sees this anicca-nupassana jnana, is the question, when one sees anicca-nupassana jnana. So is it before the object arises, or is it after the object has arisen, or is it at the present moment? So at the time of noting, when the object is fresh and new, so when noting the object, when the yogi sees the dissolution of the object, at the moment when noting, then he, she will be gaining anicca-nupassana jnana. So it is not from imagination, or it is not what is learned from the text, it is not what one can learn from book or from the teacher, and it is not from imagination or speculation. If one is talking only from his or her thought and imagination, he, she is wasting their time. So what the person says from his or her imagination or thought, it is not associating with knowledge, and what he, she is saying from his or her thought is not true nature, and he, she will be reporting in a very complex way. So whoever listens to the report that one is talking about thought and imagination, then it will not be clear. So in order to see the true nature, one needs to note the presently arising object with aim and effort at the moment of arising. So by noting thus, yogi will come to see the dissolution at the time of noting. So when noting the object, yogi comes to know impermanence when seeing the dissolution of the object when noting. So this yogi who sees the dissolution of the object when noting will be able to report clearly what he, she experiences in his or her practice. So only yogis who are able to report from their own experience of practice, his or her report will be precious, because he, she is reporting from what he, she experiences through his or her practice, and it will be associating with knowledge. And what he, she comes to know will be true nature, because the person found out through his or her personal experience of practice. So when the meditation teacher hears this kind of report, then the teacher will be very satisfied to listen to the report, because the report is about what she come to know through his or her experience. So during the practice, if the yogi is just imagining, thinking, then she is wasting his or her time. So yesterday Sayadaw explained on anicca, and today Sayadaw will continue to explain on dukkha and anatta, so that it will be complete. So Sayadaw will explain from both theory and practice. So to be more clear, Sayadaw explained with two short examples. When noting rising and falling of the abdomen, there may arise heat in some part of the body. So this heat has not arisen before, but only when circumstances meet, heat arises all of a sudden. It's called hutva. So because heat arises all of a sudden, and after arising, this heat passes away, because heat is anicca, impermanent. Heat is impermanent, and the heat passes away after arising. So the manner of passing away after arising, it is anicca lakkhana, characteristic of impermanence. So when the yogi is noting heat as heat, yogi will come to know that this heat becomes more and more fade and finally disappear. So the disappearance of the object after arising, it is anicca lakkhana, characteristic of impermanence. And when noting this heat, when the yogi sees the dissolution of the heat, yogi understood that it is impermanent. Heat is impermanent, because yogi come to see the dissolution of heat when she is noting it. So it is anicca nupassana jnana, contemplation of impermanence. In other words, it is also called Vipassana jnana, insight knowledge. In another example, when noting rising and falling of the abdomen, there may be an itch arising. So itch is also anicca, impermanent. It did not arise in the past, but it arises when there are circumstances. So itch arises. So when the yogi notes this itch as itchy, then the yogi sees the dissolution of this itch. So the itch is impermanent because it dissolves after passing away, and passing away after it has arisen, it is anicca lakkhana, characteristic of impermanence. Seeing the dissolution of the itch, yogi comes to understand that this itch is impermanent. So in this way, yogi develops anicca nupassana, contemplation of impermanence. In another word, it is called Vipassana jnana, insight knowledge. And also, when the yogi is listening, there is the sound wave, which is the striker, and the ear base, which is the receptor. Because there is sound wave and the ear base, there will be hearing consciousness. So there is hearing consciousness, hearing contact, hearing feeling. Hearing consciousness, hearing contact, and hearing feeling is the ignition. So at the moment of hearing, the sound wave arises and passes away. It does not stay for long. And the receptor, ear base, also arises and passes away. So this sound wave and the ear, they arise due to circumstances. And because there are sound waves and the ear base, the hearing consciousness, hearing contact, and hearing feeling takes place. So this hearing consciousness, hearing feeling, and hearing contact is the ignition. And also, ignition arises and passes away. So all these three are impermanent. Sound wave is impermanent. Ear base is also impermanent. Hearing consciousness, hearing contact, and hearing feeling is also impermanent. So knowing or coming to know the impermanence of either the sound wave or the ear base or the hearing consciousness, it is anicca-nupassana, contemplation on impermanence. So the striker and the receptor, they are arising and passing away in pair, and also the ignition is arising and passing away. So all three, the striker, the receptor, and the ignition, all three are impermanent. But the yogi will not know the impermanence of all three at once. At times, yogi can see the dissolution of the striker, sound wave. At times, the yogi may know the dissolution of receptor, ear base. At times, yogi may know the dissolution of ignition, hearing consciousness, hearing contact, or hearing feeling. So by knowing either one of these three disappearing, if the yogi comes to know either one, either the striker or the receptor or ignition dissolving, then the yogi sees the other two as well. So by knowing just one among the three, yogi is said to know the other two as well. Saraji gives an example. There are three strings. Which are combining, and one of the strings is on the ground, and the other two strings are in the ground. Only one of the three strings can be seen. So if the person pull out one of the strings among the three, then all three will surface. Because yeah. So if the person pulls out one string, then the other two will also be surfaced, because these three strings are connected to each other. So just by pulling out one, the other two will follow. So in the same way, when the yogi comes to see the dissolution of either the receptor or the striker or the ignition, just seeing one of the three, the yogi is also said to know the other two. So some of the Westerners, they ask question that if by knowing one, how can other two be known? Because yogi does not see the other two. It is not obvious for the yogi. But from the example of the 3 strings, you can understand that by knowing one, the other two is also said to be known. Just like when you pull out one string, you will also be getting the other two because all 3 are connected. So it is said that yadanicca dan dukkha. Whatever that arises passes away, so they are impermanent. So what is permanent? What is impermanent is suffering. So if one is tormented all the time by arising and passing away, then there will be suffering. So that's why it is said, what is impermanent is suffering. So if one is listening to a pleasant sound for some time, after some time, however pleasant the sound may be, one gets bored with the sound. Even at first, the person may think of the sound as pleasant and sweet, but after some time, the person gets bored with it so that the person doesn't think of it as good anymore. And at times, the person may even put earplugs in his or her ear. So things are arising and passing away, so it is always tormenting. Arising and passing away is always tormenting, so that it is suffering. So in the West, there are a lot of good movies. However good the movie may be, if the person watches the movie once or twice, after watching the movie once or twice, the person gets bored with the movie. However good the movie may be, after watching for once or twice, it will become very boring. So if the sound is pleasant and sweet, even though the sound is pleasant and sweet, one gets bored after listening for some time. So if the sound is unpleasant, the suffering is more evident, hearing the unpleasant sound. So people are tormented by arising and passing away all the time. So that's why things that are impermanent, they are also suffering. So impermanence is also suffering. So it's just like a person having 2 names. A person who has 2 names is compared to anicca and dukkha. So anicca itself is dukkha, impermanence itself is suffering. So what is impermanent will also be suffering. So when noting an object that is impermanent, she will see it as suffering because it arises and passes away. So arising and passing away are tormenting. That's why it is suffering. So that's why the impermanent is also suffering. And seeing the manner of tormenting of these arising and passing away, it is dukkha lakkhana, characteristic of suffering. And when noting the object, When the yogi comes to understand the suffering, when noting the object, it is called dukkha nupassana, contemplation of suffering. It is also said, yan dukkha tatanatta. It means that whatever is suffering is also non-self. Excuse me. The nama-rupa phenomena, which has the name of anicca and dukkha, impermanent and suffering, these nama-rupa are also non-self. These nama-rupa are non-self because avasavadanato, these nama-rupa, they do not arise as the person wishes. So that's why it is not atta, no self. So the nama-rupa, which are called anicca and dukkha, impermanent and suffering, these nama-rupa are also called anatta, non-self. So it is just like a person who has three names. So when the person understands anicca, impermanent, he, she is also said to understand dukkha and anatta, suffering and non-self. So just as a person who has three names are busted or caught by the police, then the police is said to be catching the other two, because a person has three names. By catching the person in the identity of one name, the other two identities are also said to be caught, because a person is having three identities at once. So in the same way, by understanding anicca, impermanent, he, she is said to be also understanding dukkha and anatta, suffering and non-self. So, avasavadanakaro anatta lakhana. It means that the characteristic of non-self is the manner of things not arising in the way the person wants them to be. So the people who believe in atta, they believe that there is jiva atta in oneself. So they believe that there is individual soul in oneself, and the individual soul is controlled by the Supreme Soul. So according to the order of the Supreme Soul, the jiva atta, individual soul, has to do. But it is said that avasavadana, it means that things do not happen according to one's own wishes. Things do not happen according to the Creator or anyone. So at the moment of hearing does not take place because of atta. Hearing does not take place because of the wish of atta. Because there is ear base and the sound wave, hearing takes place. So ear base is born from the past karma, as well as it is supported by the mind, temperature, and the nutriment. So in the sound, there are sounds that are born from the mind, and also there are sounds as a result of coming into contact between objects. So the sound of speech or conversation, they are the sound that is born from the consciousness, the mind. So when the striker strikes the receptor, there will be hearing consciousness. So hearing does not take place because of atta or the soul, but hearing takes place due to circumstances. So when there is striker and the receptor, there will be hearing consciousness. So at the moment of noting, one will come to understand that there is no self, no soul, no jiva atta or no brahma atta involved. But things are happening in their own accord due to circumstances. So it is according to Dhamma niyama, law of the Dhamma. Things are happening according to the law of Dhamma. So anatta vipassana is contemplation on non-self, and it is one of the vipassana jnana. It's a kind of insight knowledge. So nama rupa phenomena, they are anicca, impermanent, dukkha, suffering, and anatta, non-self. So these nama rupa phenomena have these three names, anicca, dukkha, and anatta, but their characteristic is different. The characteristic of impermanence is anicca lakkhana. The characteristic of suffering is dukkha lakkhana. The characteristic of non-self is anatta lakkhana. So these characteristics are the true characteristics. So when the person comes to understand any one characteristic among the three, then she automatically understands the other two. So just by understanding one of the three, the other two is also understood. So when the person understands the characteristic, any one of the characteristics of impermanent, suffering, and non-self, she is said to be understanding the other two as well. So yogis will understand through their experience that by understanding one of the three characteristics, the other two are also understood. That's why the Venerable late Paṇḍitā said in an aphorism that by understanding one of the characteristics, the other two characteristics are also known. So when hearing the Attavādi, people who believe in Atta, they believe that hearing takes place because the Creator is creating. And they believe that according to the Creator's wish, people hear. But actually, when hearing, there is no Creator or God, and hearing is not happening according to the wish of the Creator. Hearing takes place due to circumstances. So if the circumstances do not meet, no Creator is capable to create so that the person can hear. So if the sound waves do not strike the ear, then the person will not hear. Even though there are sound waves, if the ear is not good, one cannot hear. Even though their sound waves strike the ear, but if the person does not pay attention, she will not hear. So if the circumstances do not meet, such as if there is no sound wave, or if the person cannot hear, or if the person does not have attention on the sound, hearing cannot take place, however hundreds or thousands, tens of thousands or millions of creators are creating, the person will not hear if there is deficiency of the circumstances. So the sabhava, the nama-rupa, are arising in their own accord. So if all these circumstances arise, there will be hearing. If the circumstances such as the ear base, the sound wave and the attention are present, there will be ignition, hearing consciousness, hearing contact, and hearing feeling. If there is no sound wave, or if one of the factors are deficient, however thousands and millions of creators will be creating, the person will not hear. If all the circumstances are there, such as the sound wave, ear, the attention, however hundreds, thousands and millions of creators will stop the person from hearing, but the person will still hear because of the circumstances. So things are happening in their own accord. There is no atta involved. Things are not happening according to the wish of the atta, but they are happening in their own accord. So they are not atta, and no atta is involved. So it is anatta, non-self. By understanding the impermanence and suffering, anatta, non-self, is also understood. So there are two kinds of atta believed by the attavadi. So they believe in Parama-atta, the Supreme Soul, and they believe that atta is where the knowledge is situated. They believe that Parama-atta, Supreme Soul, control or can influence the whole world. And they believe that Supreme Atta knows everything. There is only one Supreme Atta, and this Atta is neither happy nor suffering, and this Supreme Atta does not have any definite shape. So this is the way they believe in Supreme Atta. There is no definite thing. According to the text, the Mahabrahma, who has a very long lifespan, is believed to be Parama-atta. And they also believe that there is Jiva-atta, individual soul, in oneself, which is making one to move, to live, to see, to hear. And this Jiva-atta, individual soul, differs from one being to another. The Jiva-atta, individual soul of an elephant, will be big, and the soul of a soul of an ant will be small. So the size of the atta depends on the size of the being. And they believe that the individual soul also has its power. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, they are influenced by the atta, individual soul. And they believe that when the body perishes, but atta stays, the soul stays, soul is permanent. Even though the body dies, the atta will not. So they believe that the main atta, which is the Brahma atta, Supreme Soul, and the Jiva atta, which are branches of Brahma atta, are permanent, good, and self. So they believe that the Brahma atta will give what the Jiva atta will like. And also Brahma atta will take responsibility of whatever the Jiva atta has done wrong. So in this way, there will be a lot of depending on the Brahma atta. Because people depend on this Mahabrahma, they are losing their own ability, because they depend so much on Brahma atta. So depending on the Brahma atta, they lose their own ability, and when they face difficulty, they are at a loss what to do. So one should not depend on other, one should not depend on Brahma atta. If one depends on it, then they will be losing their ability. Depending on the Brahma atta, there will not be any need to understand Nama Rupa, or cause and effect, or impermanent suffering and non-self. So believing in Brahma atta, depending on it, they will not need to practice so as to overcome raga, lust, and so on. So by this way, by depending on Brahma atta, they will be losing all the ability. So if one does not believe in this Mahabrahma, Supreme Soul, or Jiva atta, individual soul, one needs to depend on oneself. So by depending on oneself, one will practice so as to understand Nama Rupa, cause and effect, and also characteristic of impermanent suffering and non-self. So by gaining knowledge of Nama Rupa, cause and effect, and the characteristic of impermanent suffering and non-self, the knowledge will be weakening, dispelling the contemptible wrong view of Jiva atta and Brahma atta. So in this way, one is accumulating wholesomeness by knowledge, the knowledge that can dispel the wrong view of atta. So in this way, yogis who are here are practicing high-class wholesomeness by practicing to develop knowledge to understand Nama Rupa, cause and effect, impermanent suffering and non-self. So with this knowledge, yogis will be able to remove and uproot the contemptible wrong view. So by this way, this kusa, knowledge will be developed, and with this knowledge, these yogis can develop bhavana kusala, mental development practice. So this mental development practice is high-class wholesomeness. So you must rejoice that you are practicing so as to uplift yourself so that you will be uplifted. So by being mindful on whatever objects that arise, one will understand cause and effect, and one will also see rising, passing away, so that one will understand the characteristic of impermanent suffering and non-self. So when understanding non-self through practice, there will be Anatta-nupassana, contemplation on non-self, and when this jnana, when this knowledge becomes strong, then one will be able to overcome two sides of unwholesomeness. So just as a kind of bread that has two edges, the kind of bread that has two edges will cut the hand, both sides of the hand. And in the example of a blade that has two edges, if you hold the blade, if you hold the two edges of the blade, you will have two cuts due to the two edges of the blade. In the same way, knowledge is just like the grass that has two edges, because knowledge can remove the unwholesomeness that has arisen in the past, as well as giving no chance for the unwholesomeness to arise in the future. So just as the blade or the grass, which has two edges, will be cutting two cuts in the hand, in the same way, knowledge can remove the wholesomeness that has knowledge involved, will be able to overcome unwholesomeness that has arisen in the past, and also this knowledge, the wholesomeness that has knowledge, will able to do so that unwholesomeness has no chance to arise in the future. So in this way, it has dual quality of overcoming the unwholesomeness that has arisen in the past, as well as overcoming unwholesomeness not to arise. So there are two kinds of unwholesomeness. The first one is Upana-papaka, and the second one is Anupana-papaka. Upana-papaka means unwholesomeness that one has done in the past existence, or in this existence, the kind of unwholesomeness that one had done is called Upana-papaka. And also, the kind of unwholesomeness that is similar to the unwholesomeness one had done in the past is called Upana-papaka. For example, killing may be done by the person once and then again. So this killing is similar to the killing one had done in the past. So Upana-papaka means the wholesomeness that one had done in the past, and the wholesomeness that is similar to what she had done in the past is called Upana-papaka. Anupana-papaka means the kind of unwholesomeness one had not done in this existence. There is no unwholesomeness that one had not done throughout the samsara, because there are a lot of existences in the samsara. So that's why there is no unwholesomeness that one had not done throughout one's samsara. That's why Anapana papaka means the kind of unwholesomeness that one had not done in this existence. And also concerning with some kind of object, the kind of unwholesomeness that had not arisen is called Anapana papaka. So just as if you hold a blade that has two edges, the blade will give two cuts in the hand. And just as the grass that has two edges will be able to two sides in the hand. In the same way, when wholesomeness arises, it is able to overcome the kind of unwholesomeness that has arisen in the past, and it can also overcome unwholesomeness so that unwholesomeness has no chance to arise. So Sayadaw will explain on that from theory and practice tomorrow. So today is Uposatha day, so Sayadaw was giving talk for 1.5 hours, so half an hour more than usual.